feel free to move around the venue while people are speaking, coffee, soft drinks, whatever you want to do. Look, just to start off, one of the things that the people in T-shirts have been talking about over the past few weeks is relentlessly positive. And maybe if we could translate that into today's event, that would be fantastic. So relentlessly positive, rather than negative, rather than talking about politicians, we're actually wanting to talk about people and the people of Canberra. So if we can keep that theme going on. It's my pleasure to introduce Aunty Violet to do the Welcome to Country. Thank you.
Thank you, and what a pleasure it's been here today and stand beside these independents that are looking to stand for us and to give everybody a voice and address our problems. I'm a shorty, so this is annoying. But before I go in, I want to acknowledge David Pocock, who I simply adore. David's got a good heart. From the referendum, on the outcomes, my grandson and I was there and I cried. It didn't take that long. And who stood beside us and consoled us was Dave. We need more Daves in politics to stand up for all the people. Don't matter what background you are, don't matter where you come from. Don't matter, as Albo says, Department of Housing Houses. He will stand up, and independents do. But I also want to acknowledge Kate Chaney. When those 7 independent women got in, I give them a name. You wouldn't believe, the Magnificent 7. And she explains to me that she's one of the quiet ones, but I reckon you're achieving. The quiet ones are the sneaky ones, I reckon. But I want to welcome you to the land of the Ngunnawal people. This is my mother's country. My father is a Wiradjuri man, but I follow my matriarch's bloodline. I'd like to pay my respects to my elders past, present and future, and extend that respect to any First Nations people here today as well. But I'd also like to acknowledge all the non-Indigenous people here as well, and thank Canberra for voting yes. We haven't come that far, we just stood still. But we need leaders that will tell us where to from here. And you've seen the outcomes of closing the gap, where they had 19 indicators. 4 indicators were addressed. My eldest granddaughter just had her first baby. Where to from here? But we need independents to stand up for us because we are not there guided by rules. I'm one of the people, it says, I say what I think. Sometimes I think me mouth runs away from my brain, but that's how I go. But we need to stand together. I'm a proud Aboriginal woman, a proud Ngunnawal woman, but I'm also a proud Australian. And I'm here to observe because I'm thinking about running as well. I live in Yerrabi. So I would like your support for the independence because it's the future where we're going to go. We need to stand together. And nobody's going to solve Aboriginal problems, First Nations people's problems, but ourselves. Give us a chance. So in keeping in the general spirit, and I only say this in Canberra, of reconciliation, it gives me great pleasure and open arms to welcome you to the land of the Ngunnawal people. And on behalf of my family and the other Ngunnawal families, I say welcome, welcome. And I wish all the independents all the best in October. Let's go get them. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. Just so the format of today town hall / launch is we're going to hear from some speakers who are sitting in front of us here. There'll also be a chance to have your input. So if you have a question or a comment, we're about 10:30 we're going to have those. If you don't feel confident with the microphone, that's fine. Go to the website and share your priorities with us. Okay, so let's introduce our first speaker. Clare Carnell was born and bred in Canberra. She studied law at ANU. She's been away in Sydney. She's been overseas. She's come back here and she's going to help drive independence for Canberra. And I'd love to introduce to you co-founder and director of Independence for Canberra, Clare Carnell.
Thanks, Dale. Thank you, Aunty Violet. I think 11:30 is a little bit more realistic for the... I think so, yeah. But you'll only have me for 2.5 minutes, I hope, before I hand over to the rest of them. Look, thank you guys all so much for coming. It's pretty exciting that it's actually launch day for Independence for Canberra. My co-founder, Thomas Emerson, our core group of volunteers and I are delighted you're here. To those of you watching on live stream, thanks for tuning in. Look, there's a great old saying, it's not the critic who counts, it's the man in the arena. In other words, put up or shut up. So we can't shut up, but we are putting up. So Tom is a potential candidate for Kurrajong and myself as party director. So hopefully, with many of you, we're going to be finding candidates. We're going to be coordinating campaigns. Look, one of the first and most consistent bits of feedback I've had along the way with all this is an apology. So sorry, Claire, I don't know anything about politics. Oh, sorry, Claire, I don't know who any of them are, present company accepted. Why the hell are we sorry? It's not our job to be interested or engaged with pollies. It's their job to interest us, to engage us. So to the extent that few of them, apart from perhaps Senator Pocock and others, are doing that, it's a fair question. Are they doing their job at all? Independence for Canberra are here in answer to that question. So we're hoping to find, encourage and I guess court and then coordinate competent, capable, connected Canberrans. And to that end, echoing Jeremy, they're going to be campaigns that are relentlessly positive, they're going to be inclusive, they're going to be community-based, they're going to be volunteer-driven. We've got a playbook to follow from the people in front of us. Look, to the extent that we ever doubt the good that independence can do, we only need to look to last week. So Senator Pocock achieved a lot with significant amendments to the federal government's industrial relations legislation. And here. And David, you did that after feedback from the community and feedback from small business. There's no doubt that we need that kind of action and that kind of focus in the ACT. So we know it's time for change. We believe this is the way to do it. It's not just promises. It's not just campaign mode. Yeah, that we kick off the campaign today. But come the 19th of October, hopefully you're going to have met and been convinced by your candidates. They're going to have been out and about in your community. They're going to have returned every phone call. They're going to have replied to every message, and you're going to have met them. And guess what? We're going to listen. We're going to listen to you. And then we'll respond. So whether it's door knocking or letterboxing, make a phone call, talk to your mates, a financial contribution, we need you. We can't do it ourselves. Please get involved. Please reach out. Okay, we're not just going to do this with the right people and the right candidates. We're going to do it with good humour. We're going to do it with good grace. We're going to enjoy the good times. And I can't think of a better note on which to introduce Michael Moore. Michael was our independent MLA from 98, 97 to 2001, 89. Sorry, Michael. I was 5. From when I was 5 years old to 2001. He was the first, and so far, the last independent candidate to be part of a ministry, or part of the government, I beg your pardon, with the Ministry for Health. Yes? Michael's also a fundamentally good guy. He still operates by the pay it forward principle. He doesn't just give advice and help to us, he gives it to anyone who asks for it. Surprisingly funny guy. Please welcome Michael Moore.
Thanks so much, Claire, and thanks for the welcome to country, Aunty Violet. That's brilliant, and putting your hand up is even more brilliant, so that's greatly appreciated. I want to start, first of all, I want to acknowledge there's 2 of my former Assembly colleagues here, and as part of what we do, we would always acknowledge that, Bill Stefaniak and Kate Carnell. Thanks for being here. But I want to start with that story of Mal Meninga. You know, I tell a bit differently. When Mal decided he was going to be an independent. So my perception of this story started when Paul Osborne brought Mal to talk to me and say, even though we had really quite different philosophies and approaches, we did do a lot of work together. Mal's thinking about running, because Paul's been in his ear actually, and after a discussion in my lounge room I said, listen Mal, you need to actually know why you're running, because that's what people are going to ask you. And so what you need to answer is, what 3 things do you want to make better for Canberra? Just 3. And I said, don't tell me now, think about them. And once you're actually comfortable with that, then A, you've got a good reason for running, and B, when you are interviewed, you can just go back to those. Well, I'm driving out to my daughter's school with my daughter sitting in the car when Mal's being interviewed. And, well, Mal, why is it that you're going to be running for Canberra? 3 things, Mal. I'm yelling into the radio in the car. 3 things, Mal. 3 things. Oh fuck, I can't do this. My daughter, Dad, you're crazy. So look, people who put their hand up to run for politics at all, I always have a huge amount of admiration for them. It is an experience that you will really enjoy. It will be challenging at times, but it is worthwhile and it is exciting. It's even more exciting, of course, if you get elected. Now, if you're going to get elected, and think about those 3 things, but I also think that what we ought to be doing is, for all our candidates, is we should be setting out our philosophy, our principles, and the approach we're going to take. That's what everybody should know about. And so in my last election, 98, a lot has changed, the philosophy I talked about was a healthy society. But equally, somebody could be talking about equity. They could be talking about living within our means. I don't mind what it is you choose, but think about what it is that you philosophically that you would like to make the difference. And then think about the principles, and we've already touched on those. Independents of Canberra have a run. The ones that I think about are integrity, empowering individuals, prevention from domination. It's a bit esoteric, that one, but that's me. Sustainability in both the economy and environment, openness in government, equity and access to health and education, respect and dignity for everybody, and promotion of initiatives, of innovation, of creativity. I think these are the sorts of principles that should drive any candidate as to what they're thinking about. And then you've got to think about, well, what's your approach going to be? And I think one of the things that was most important for us, when you know there are likely or possibly be a minority government, how do you make government stable? Now, I've been having a chat with Gary Humphreys, who's writing a PhD on the first 4 terms of the ACT Assembly. And can I say that first Assembly was hardly stable. And so we actually began to think about how we wanted to do things. So the most important thing is you remain independent of the political parties. That's actually quite important. And I think this is what the Greens have not done in this in this last term of government. They've effectively formed a coalition. You don't remain tied to businesses, to unions, to anybody. You remain free of those sorts of contacts, and you vote issue by issue on the principles that you've done. You do not trade off one area for another area. And actually, Nick Xenophon, in his inaugural speech in the Senate, explained this very, very neatly and carefully. Remember, he'd been a member of the upper house in South Australia. And then you ensure stable government by guaranteeing that the chief minister will remain as the chief minister, and they get their budget. That's a government responsibility, unless there's reprehensible conduct. And that's, I think, a pretty fundamental as well. But you also have a role to increase accountability. And you want to make sure that the Assembly committees are working effectively and that you can see administrative things occurring that are appropriate. So, yes, you should have policies, but they're based on these these principles, because one of the things you find when you do get elected is, yes, you've got your policies, but actually you're making decisions on a huge range of things that are not in your policies, am I right? And so those principles and that approach are really important. And finally, I'd just like to mention Hare-Clark system. The reason you have independence for Canberra is because grouping will give you, no, it doesn't give you an advantage, it moves away the disadvantage that independence would otherwise have. So you should not be a party, you should have agreed philosophy, probably agreed principles, you might have some extra ones, and then you can work as a group together. And with the sort of support that I see today, there's a really, really good chance that we can have a very different government that we've had for the last, 22 years. That's actually what we really need to do. And so I really look forward to a raft of independents being elected on the 3rd Saturday in October. Thanks.
Thanks, Michael. One of my favourite existing politicians, Kate Chaney, is an extraordinary role model, especially I think for young women thinking about politics. She is the first independent elected from Western Australia to the House of Reps as a member for Curtin. Please join me in welcoming Kate.
Thank you very much, and it's very exciting to be here, and thanks Aunty Violet, and I acknowledge the Ngunnawal people and pay my respects. So my colour hit scheme here is a coincidence actually today. I'm not from this community, and I'm here to share with you my experiences of being an independent elected in WA in the last election. And I thought I'd tell you a little bit about why, how we ran the campaign, and then how I operate now. First, the why. I had never imagined I would be involved in politics. I could see that there was a problem, but didn't see myself in either party, and so I thought that was it really. Couldn't really see a role for myself, and that was fine because it looked pretty ugly and pretty revolting. But the more time I spent on non-profit boards and in community services, as well as in consulting and as a lawyer, I saw over and over again how important politics is in our future building system. Our future building system is politics, politicians, media, community, and all together we create a future. And everyone in the system thinks that there's a problem, and everyone thinks it's someone else's problem to fix. And so then I was asked to run as an independent in January 2022. An election could have been called at any moment, and the maximum time that the campaign could have been was 4 months. And it made me want to vomit, to be honest. For 2 weeks I woke up every morning thinking, am I really going to do this? Because there are so many reasons not to. And there was just one reason to do it, and that is that it needed to be done. And I was really worried about the direction that the country was heading in and our ability to make good long-term decisions. And it seemed to me that the major parties were machines that were focused on winning elections rather than focused on what the country actually needs. And I kept saying to the group who'd asked me, if you find someone better, I'll be very, very supportive. And eventually I said yes. And despite feeling sick about it in those 2 weeks, from the day we launched, I've not had a moment's regret about that. And it's been an incredible experience. In 4 months, we worked up to 900 volunteers, and most of those were people who'd never been involved in politics before. We had an office that broke all the rules of what your office should be. It should have, separate locked areas for strategy because of all the spies and this kind of thing. We had a Japanese restaurant that literally had paper-thin walls. And it was a wonderful thing. We had people wandering in off the street to see what it was about. And we'd say, well, do you want to get involved? What can you do? What do you want to do? And so we formed this big, messy team of people who just wanted to see something different. And it was incredibly energising. It felt like we were inventing democracy, to be honest, because there was just this strong sense that for the first time, people in Curtin felt like they actually had a say and they could have some influence on outcomes, and it had been a safe Liberal seat for a very long time. So that was very energising. We similarly had an entirely positive campaign. We didn't do any attacks. Despite the attacks that came, we focused on policy, and we were really keen to focus on the policy, not the politics. We had a surprising victory, not least surprising to me. And then I had to have the conversation with my husband, about a month before, saying, I might actually win. How are we going to do this? I've got 3 teenage kids, and Perth is a long way away, and a 3-hour time difference this time of year. So it is a challenging lifestyle. But I have zero regrets, because it has felt like it's breathed new life into democracy. And talking about how we operate now, I'm very passionate about how we create opportunities for people to have a say on the decisions that are being made in Canberra. So we are constantly trialling new ways of getting community input, collating it and feeding it into processes. And Margaret Wheatley says there's no power for change greater than a community discovering what it cares about. We saw that in the campaign, and that energy has continued. And I slightly disagree with Claire. I think, yes, it is up to politicians to provide opportunities for engagement. It is also the obligation of people in a democracy to turn up. And the world is run by the people who show up. And we create, so I focus on creating those opportunities and publicising them on particular policy issues, but also to just have open listening sessions where people come and tell me their concerns. And it's really fun. It's a really fun part of the job, and I really enjoy the challenge of hearing conflicting perspectives and trying to find a way both for people to hear each other more, because we're so polarised. So even the fact of getting people in the same room and hearing different perspectives has some benefit in itself. And then also trying to find a sensible way forward. So it's been a fantastic journey. And in another way that I work now, I don't hold the balance of power, but I take democracy very, very seriously. And I agonise over every vote in the House of Representatives. And it's interesting going into the House and watching the parties go to the side that they're meant to go to. Most of them don't really know what we're voting on at any one time. And then you'll see the independents in the middle trying to, work out where they're going to go. We should be agonising over every decision. We should be thinking about what is in the interests of our community, but also the country as a whole. And that is our role as parliamentarians. Parliament shouldn't be just executive recruiting, field for the executive government. It should actually be focusing on the legislation. So my deep belief in democracy has led me to take these decisions very, very seriously and try and focus always on what's the right thing to do and less on the politics. And it's incredibly difficult to keep that focus because the day-to-day craziness of it can really suck you in. But I think that's the benefit of independence, is taking a long-term perspective, being focused on what the right thing to do is, and really connecting back to community and creating those opportunities for people to feel like it is actually their democracy. So I wish Independence for Canberra every success, and you might end up with candidates who believe very different things to me, and that's fine too, because it's about what your community believes and finding the candidates that are aligned with that rather than any other political grouping. So I wish you all the best, and I say thank you very much for turning up, because that's how decisions actually, that's how change is made. So thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Well, he's got a bald head and a big heart. Senator David Pocock. First independent senator. He's brave, he's brilliant. Dave.
Thanks, Claire. That may be the best intro I've ever had. Factual and to the point. Thanks, Aunty Violet. Thanks again for your leadership, your courage, and for your welcome to this incredible part of the world. I'd also like to acknowledge the member for Curtin and thank her for all she does in the Parliament and for being here today. And thank you, all of you. It has been an incredible privilege to represent the ACT, somewhere I love living. One of my favourite things about, I guess, the job, if you can call it that, is actually getting out and talking to Canberrans and seeing just how much Canberrans love Canberra, how much they love living here and how much they want to see decisions being made that take us in a direction that people can be proud of. And I guess how many opinions people have about which direction that should be and how, where should we be going. And I guess that's what I've seen as the value of independence in the Senate or in the Parliament, is not being tied to a party line. As Kate said, when it comes to votes, I'd say in the Senate 95% of people probably have no idea what we're actually voting on. They have no understanding of the policy and the nuance and the discussions that have gone into getting to that point. But as an independent, I'm very conscious that every time I vote, and I'm voting on your behalf, the only power I have is from the people that have elected me. And with the Senate and the ACT, there only being 2 senators, and having to get 33% of the vote, I'm very aware that not everyone voted for me. And I think that's a really powerful thing, to get out there and do the consultation that's necessary to understand the broad spectrum of views in our community, and to try and find a way forward that is sensible, and that I think, yes, this is what I think Canberrans want for Canberra, but what we want for Australia too. And it's been my experience with big reform or big votes in the Senate that the majority of Canberrans just want politicians to get on with it and find a sensible way forward, to put some of the ideology aside and say what's best for our communities, and not what's best for our communities leading to the next election, but what's best for us going into the next decade. What's best for our children? How do we set them up? And so politics was not something I ever thought I would be doing. I grew up in Zimbabwe, so absolutely knew the value of politics. But like Kate and many others thought, this is not for me. And it was really only when I was repeatedly approached by members of the Canberra community saying, will you run for the Senate as independent? I'd been frustrated, and I figured at some point you've got to put your money where your mouth is, and you've got to put your hand up, and have loved almost every moment of it. Have learned a huge amount, but really it is it's quite something to see the impact that I think, even though you may not see all of it publicly, but behind the scenes, the impact that independent candidates connected to their communities is having. And so I think this is a great opportunity for Canberra. And again, thanks everyone for coming out, and all the very best to Independence for Canberra. Really looking forward to seeing what you do as you go about connecting, finding out what Canberrans want, and then I think as Michael said, working out what are these values and principles that we commit to. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Another bald head with a big heart, Tom Emerson, co-founder of Independence for Canberra. He's not just a staffer for Senator Pocock, he's also a dad and husband to Rosie. We have Praxis just down the road in Campbell, which is not just a gym. It's a very, very cool movement studio. You should check it out. Tom's a lot of things, but I'll let him tell you about him. He is also, as we said, a potential candidate for Kurrajong, and please join me in welcoming Thomas Emerson.
Thanks, Claire, and thanks everyone for coming along. We put the call out a couple of weeks ago for anyone who wants something better to vote for in the ACT to come out today. You've all come out, so you've all outed yourself as swing voters. We'll have someone at the door taking your details, and we'll hold you to that come October. You can hold us to the something better part. But honestly, I mean, I think it's incredibly powerful and inspiring to see this number of people come out with an interest in something better in politics. I think there are more of us across the city. I've spoken with a lot of them already, and we're excited to speak with hopefully all of them over the next 9 months. I think it could be helpful to share a little bit about my story. Would have been nice if Claire just told it, but I'll tell it instead. I pretend to not like to talk about myself, but... So I did grow up in a political family. My father was a cabinet minister in the Rudd-Gillard government, so very Labor Party lines in the household growing up. I never found it interesting. I wasn't interested growing up. It wasn't something I was engaged with. A little bit embarrassed joining David's team to expose myself and how little I know about it. But I just didn't see it as a vehicle for the kind of change that I thought was needed. I went off and studied philosophy at ANU, which was great, and then, as Claire said, came out of that, and I'd spent 4 years thinking a lot and thought I wanted to do something and make a positive contribution to my community. So I started Praxis, a movement studio over in Canberra. We were in Phillip to begin with, and I'd always had an interest in setting up kind of a community centre or something like that. But you need something to do in a community centre. You can't just gather and talk about community. And I came across something called movement practice, which had helped me. I had some chronic pain and injuries through my university and high school years, and I wanted to share that. And that's what Praxis became. I think we've got some people from the group here, and for me it was and still is, I'm still running the business, a place where people can come together and try to make their lives a little bit better, you know, and gather around something positive. And I think that's something that we can do through this movement as well. When David put his hand up to run in the ACT, I knew Dave a little bit personally, and I figured he's probably not just saying all this stuff about integrity because it's the right thing to say. I was confident he meant it. And I had wondered to myself in the years before that whether people with integrity who just wanted to speak the truth and advocate on behalf of their communities could ever get elected and be successful. And when Dave put his hand up, I thought, this is what we need. And I think a lot of people felt that way. He wasn't alone. Kate was in that wave as well, and so many others were. And I think it's been amazing to see that they've proved that we can, that is possible, that we can get people in politics with high ethical standards that aren't there to represent anyone else but their communities. They're not there to represent themselves. They're not there for their own careers, or maybe they are. I don't know what the plan is in terms of promotion. Sometimes Dave gets asked if he'll become Prime Minister, but he doesn't want to join either party, so they're there to do the best they can by their communities, and I think we can bring that to the ACT, to local politics here. I've been working for Dave for the last year and a half and speaking with a lot of people across Canberra. Started with a lot of the small business community who just don't feel that this government's there for them, that this government understands the experience of a small business owner and cares about it, where they do. But it's not just the small business community, and this is what's frustrated me, is that there are all sorts of different cohorts of people across our city that don't feel represented. And you have enough conversations. Multicultural community doesn't feel represented. Younger people don't feel like the government's listening to them. Older people feel forgotten. We've spoken a little bit about the First Nation issues. You have enough of those conversations, you start asking, who are they representing? And I don't have a good answer. Maybe we can ask it of them. But I felt I couldn't have another conversation like that without trying to do something about it. And so that's why I put my hand up as a potential candidate and tried to pull this group together, which has been a lot of work and a lot of pushing and pulling and trying to figure out how do you make a group of independents work. We're trying to prove that we can do that over the next 8.5 months so that we can have some practice once we get in there working together, while retaining our independence and our freedom to disagree. I think it's clear that we need representatives who put people first and start by listening. That we're not tacking the listening onto the end of a consultation where I ask you, oh, do you want tea or coffee? And you say coffee and I bring you tea because that's what I was going to bring you anyway. I think a lot of us anyone who's been involved and tried to engage with government here has had an experience like that, which is almost worse than not being asked. Don't ask my view unless you're interested in it. So I think that's what we need, and we need people who are willing to listen to what our community actually wants for Canberra and for our future. We've been speaking about the kinds of candidates we'd like to support, and Claire came up with the 3 A's, which I was against in the beginning because it's kind of cliche, but I think they're good. We need MLAs who are accessible to the community, who are active participants in community life, and like as has been said, that are actively going out and trying to connect with people who aren't already politically engaged, like some of us who, that's not where we came from, and I think it's something the independents can do. I haven't managed to get an MLA's office on the phone in the last 18 months. They don't answer their phones from what I can tell. If any are in here or you've got staff here, you'll probably be answering them tomorrow. But I'd encourage people to try out, see if you can get anyone on the phone. I haven't had any luck. People in our community who would love to meet with their local member or meet with the relevant minister and can't get a meeting, hear that they're too busy to connect with their community. We hear from them in David's office and often meet with them ourselves. I don't think it's good enough that people have to go to their federal senator to talk about footpaths, but it's what happens. And then representatives who take action on the basis of what they've heard. We see a lot of plans for plans being made, and they're great plans and they look beautiful when you lay them out in a nice brochure. I'd like to see some of the plans implemented. I've read some of the plans from 10, 15 years ago and they look great. I'd love to see them re-released and actually acted on, rather than replanning. So we're interested in taking action on the basis of what we've heard. And then finally, who are answerable to their decisions and who are accountable when they make mistakes. We need representatives who are willing to do that. And if they land on a different side of the argument, they come back to you and explain why. And that's how a good relationship works, and I think that's how democracy should work, is we don't all have to agree, but we should understand where we stand and we should understand why we disagree. Some of the things that I think we could focus on and I'd be interested in focusing on are backing locals who back themselves. We've got a lot of people across Canberra doing incredible things, trying to make a positive contribution to our community, starting businesses, building businesses. It might be commercialising research coming out of our universities here, or starting community organisations and trying to help out people in the community, and often doing a better job of it, providing services than the government does. And they just don't feel like the government's getting behind them, that the government's in touch with them. So if people back themselves, we should be backing them. And I know there's people in the room who are considering leaving our city, having started a business here because they don't feel there's a level of support that they need. They want to expand their operations and they try to find a way to work constructively with the government, and it doesn't seem the government's all that interested. I know some people who have left our city because they're tired of it. So we're interested in getting behind people who are getting behind themselves, and putting politics behind people. And then also helping locals who need our help. This is something that I wasn't aware of it until I started working in David's office. How many people aren't getting the help they need in our community? In areas like public housing, where we hear stories of black mold in the ceiling, literally mushrooms growing in people's carpet, mice in the walls, or public housing being left to become so decrepit that it's vacant despite a huge wait list. This isn't good enough. This is the national capital. We need to do something about that and look after people who need our help. And it's the same in healthcare. The highest gap payments in the country, lowest bulk billing rates in the country. 2-year wait list to see a paediatrician is what I'm hearing. So if you've got a child who needs help, they're not a child by the time they get into the doctor. If you don't have private health insurance in this city, you're in serious trouble. Or if you do and you can't cover the gap payments, you're also in trouble and you're expected to travel to Sydney or elsewhere. I don't think that's good enough either. And I know there's a federal component to health. Well, let's hold the Commonwealth to account if it's about that. Because again, I don't think it's good enough for a national capital to not be providing healthcare to the people who need it. We could talk about the problems all day, and I don't want to talk for too long, although I have been. something that I'm excited to focus on is what does Canberra look like if we get all of this right? You know, this place has so much potential, so many people here who love Canberra and would love to see it thrive. I think we need a capital that's leading the nation rather than trailing other jurisdictions, that's trying new things, piloting new ideas, looking across the world for what's best practice in these areas. What can we try here as a smaller jurisdiction with one level of government? And we've had a government that's not had a strong opposition that could have been trying a lot of new things and trying to find innovative ways to solve our problems. A Canberra that's, decision makers who are building our city in a way that builds stronger communities rather than pulling people apart. There's a lot of people in the room who have tried to provide input into what's been happening in terms of development in this city, and we should be focusing on that. The way that we build our future matters, and whether we're building stronger communities or not is up to us. And also doing that in a way that preserves Canberra's natural beauty and preserves the character of this place that people really love. We can strive for world-class local government service delivery. And I think if you contact the government, you should hear back and you should have your concern actioned. And I don't mind focusing on things like footpaths and long grass, right? Pools and parks, these sorts of things affect people's lives. And that's what I'm not seeing done. And we walk through our neighbourhood with a pram in Dixon, and all we talk about is the footpaths and how much we need someone elected to tidy them up. And again, these are the concerns that we hear through the Senator's office, and we try to chase them up. So that's more that we can focus on. What I'd love to see above more is more ambition for our city and what's possible here. We can achieve a lot if we work together, and this is what the independent movement's about. It's about bringing people together, and anyone in our city who feels that way, becoming a part of it. You know, we want to hear from you on what you want to see us focus on, what you want to see prioritised. I think we can do so much if we work together and we bring people in to the political tent who otherwise wouldn't be, and maybe who have felt like the decisions get made over there without my input, and it doesn't matter whether or not I'm involved. It does matter. Our goal is to get at least one independent elected in every electorate. We think we can do it. We think if we do it, we can speak truth to power and hold the government to account. And our goal is that the government can't ignore us anymore, can't ignore our communities anymore, and has to negotiate with the community if they're going to do anything. That's the goal that we're aiming for, so that on October 20, we can wake up with a genuine crossbench independence in every electorate, and you have a local member you know you can go to and speak to and see their views change on the basis of what you've said. That's the outcome that we're shooting for. There's no way we can do it without help, though. Yeah, so if you're interested, or you know someone who might be interested, we desperately need your help. We need your time. We need your skills. We need your expertise. We need your money. We need to spread the word. We've got flyers all around the place. Please take a stack, take 5 or 10 flyers, give them to people you care about who care about our community. Please come in and get involved from day one. We're going to be having more conversations like this. There'll be a little bit of time for input today, but our next meeting's on February 25th, and that's going to be focused on issues in central Canberra, in Currajong, so in the north, inner south, pulling people together and just hearing from you about what you're concerned about, what you want prioritised. And we'll do the same thing in other electorates over the coming months, as well, hunting for candidates who are willing to put their hands up in those electorates and represent their communities as best they can. So that's it from me. If you want to see us succeed, we need your help to do it. We think we can do it, and we think it'll be a great thing for the city. I mean, I honestly feel that way. We need great representatives in there who are ready to deliver better results for our city. So please get involved. Thank you. More from me. We got the second mic on.
Thanks, Nicholas.
Can you pull up the FAQs? We'll just be quick. Yeah.
Hey, Nicholas, can you put the mic on, Doc? Okay, I'll just come and talk. I'll talk with a big voice, you're right.
No, it's looking at this one for the stream.
Okay, fine. You can do it. So we have a couple of FAQs, guys. Frequently asked questions, and we'll run through them quickly with Tom and I before we jump into feedback from you guys. So Tom, is this just a way to get Liberals into power?
No. No, this is a way to get independents into power. And I think whoever forms government will do a better job of it if there's a strong crossbench holding them to account. We're talking about running independent candidates who'll be free to choose which potential chief ministers to support. And that's a decision that'll be made further down the track. And hopefully, look, our goal is that on election night or the day after, that independents have a role to play in deciding who that is. And what that means is that our community has a decision to make. That's what we're interested in doing.
And I should note, with that answer, please brains trust Michael Moore, like he's a good solid source. Where's your money? Who's funding you?
We don't have any of it. We're funding ourselves. This week we've received a few donations since we've announced, so thanks so much for people who are contributing. If you can chip in a little bit, it'll be greatly appreciated, but at the moment we're bootstrapped to buggery.
What are your policies?
I've spoken a little bit about some of the problems that we're seeing, and we'd love to hear from people across Canberra about the problems you're seeing and what you want addressed, and take on some of that expert input from across the city. There's so many people with expertise in the ACT who could contribute to coming up with good policies and implementing them. We'll have more to say about policy closer to the election. We're not here saying we know the solutions. We know there are some problems, and we're interested in hearing from people about what they want solved and how they want that done. So if it comes to healthcare, we'll be speaking with GPs and their patients about what needs to happen and develop policies on the back of that.
And I know Aunty Violet will have a bit to say on First Nations, for example. Mm-hmm.
I live in Gungahlin. It's not all about First Nations, and I'm be there for First Nation, but if I decided to run for Yirrabee, it's about everybody. It's about families. Families, I believe, are left behind. I live in Gungahlin, and the blocks of land out there and around Canberra is so far-fetched out of the hands of families. You can't even swing a cat around in one of the blocks that you can, and you're paying $400,000, $500,000 for a block of land. Then they expect to get money to put the house on that land, but also grass. But at the moment, and I'm not speaking against. I think the rail is a good thing, but not the first stage. I supported. The second stage I don't support. I believe we should have put more into electric buses around Canberra, and what it is that Gungahlin is a growing population. The infrastructure's not there. All these new suburbs that have popped up in Gungahlin, take for instance, if you know where Overall Avenue is, and then you come and you want to go across to Kellaway Avenue where the Gold Creek senior side is. It takes, you have a look behind you and the amount of traffic, and then you go on from Horse Park Drive, you want to go up to Gungahlin Drive, more traffic. So I take my little nephew to school. He's late every morning because the amount of traffic. As these elected people, government, need to get out and have a look what the normal people, Canberra people, has to put up with. And this is what's happening. I'm not just there standing for First Nations people. I'm standing for Canberrians, that we're sick of people telling us that they're going to do it. When they get into government, they don't do it. They leave us behind. So I think the way to go is independent, because we don't answer to any groups. We answer to the community.
Tom.
Just quickly on that, I think that's worth saying, you know, this point about light rail, everyone asks, what's your view on light rail? We should have representatives from different electorates with different views on it. I mean, people in Gungahlin aren't going to have the same view on light rail as people in the centre of Canberra, and they're not going to have the same view as people in Tuggeranong. But if your representative is part of a party from either of those areas, they've got the exact same view on the matter. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I understand that's how it works, but I think independence can bring a nuance to the debate that's lacking. And I'm excited to see that happen. And then we can disagree publicly if we have different disagreements. I'm not saying I disagree with you. I'd never say that. Well, but that's exactly it. That they should be public and we should know why, right?
Public arguments, yay. What the hell is a party of independence?
I think Michael spoke to this before. It's incredibly difficult to get elected without a grouping here in the ACT. Most people don't understand how the system works. I didn't, and probably still don't. I think we've had one person ever elected without being part of a group. So that's why we're forming a group. But anyone elected under our banner will be free to operate and vote independently, consistent with the wishes of the community they're representing and with the principles that we've got up on our website around no vested interests and evidence-based policy and so on.
So we are about to throw to the floor in a moment. So if there's anyone who has a question or a bit of feedback, if you want to pop up to the mic,
Yeah, so
if you want to start making your way this way. And our final question, if you want to think about that, who are your candidates?
We don't know yet. I'm like Kate. If there's a better option in my electorate that should be supported and the group wants to get behind, then my life's pretty good at the moment. And I'm willing to back anyone who's got the support of the group, and same goes for all our electorates. We're calling for people who haven't taken an interest in politics before, but are ready to step up for their community. And we need people from across the city to be doing that. People in Tuggeranong, people in Gungahlin, people in Woden, Western Creek, and Molonglo, people in Belconnen. So if you know someone who'd make a great candidate, there's a place that you can let us know about that on the website, and we'll be speaking with people over the next little while and running them through a bit of a selection process, myself included, to see who comes out on the end of that. But we'll probably have some more to say about that closer to the middle of the year. And in terms of input from the floor, we just want to hear people's views. If you have questions, we have good question answerers over here, but also just keen to hear what you want us to focus on.
Hi, thank you. Very excited to be here. This is a bit of a PSA for the beginning of the campaign. My name's Peter Swabrick. I ran in the last territory elections with my wonderful colleague Rob over here. No, not naming any names, but our T-shirts were purple. I just want to let all the women in the room know that the federal government has funded a Women for Election series of workshops and forums. It's over the next 5 years. I'm one of the trainers, and our goal is to reach 4,000 women across all electorates of Australia. We're totally bipartisan. It's the government's money, so we've got to be equal opportunity to everybody. I won't be running in this election as a candidate because I have to stay non-partisan because I'm a trainer, and I'd rather train 1,000 of you than stand. So I'd like you all to go to wfe.org.au. We're looking at April for Canberra. Register your interest, sign up for the newsletter. Basically, it's if you want to get elected, but it's also how to get another woman elected. So there's some really great training. I'm going to have to learn the Hare Clark system better than I did last time. So yeah, you want to come along and learn about the Hare Clark, sign up for one of our workshops. So yeah, WFE, Women for Election. So go independents, but don't tell anyone because I'm non-partisan.
Thanks, Tom. I'm totally on board with everything that you're saying. You mentioned that you have done a little bit of research talking to people in the Canberra community. Could you just give us an idea of, say, some of the top 3 problems that most people that you're speaking to have an issue with?
Yeah, sure. So part of my role in David's office has been the ACT-specific advocacy, and so this for me kind of came out of our conversations in the office, our conversations with people in the community. So in a way, we've been receiving input for a long time and wishing that we could kind of do more at the federal level to support what's happening at the local level. I touched on public housing, but I think housing in general is a huge issue, completely unaffordable, and it's a problem for young people. Like we have a mental health crisis, across the community, but especially young people who don't feel there's a future for them. And don't feel there's an affordable future for them. Sorry. We need to be doing more to give people hope that their efforts matter. So that's something I care about. Sorry. We spoke about health as well. I've got a 2-year-old at home, and if something were to happen to me, I'd want him to be in a community and part of a society that would look after him. And we're not looking after people who need our help in healthcare. And then another issue that's come up pretty often is decisions made about the future of our city in terms of what it looks like, planning, what do we want to build our city into? And I'm not necessarily critical of all of the decisions that are being made, but it is something that comes up often, is that people feel decisions are being made behind their backs, or actually right out in the open, and there's no dissenting voice to represent the other views in our community on those decisions. So I think we can be leading the country and become a model city of the future in terms of things like sustainable densification. Like, how do we solve the housing problem while retaining the character of our city, and protecting the natural environment alongside a built environment that people feel they can be a part of their community and connected with the people around them. So those are some of the things that have been raised. But the next 8.5 months is about hearing more from people about what they care about. And I'd just say quickly what they care about in their specific area as well. Like, what do you want to happen at your local shops? What are the things that you care about in your neighbourhood, in your suburb, not just ACT-wide?
You're going to grab a sip of water while we take a breath.
One more question to ask him.
If you've got questions for any of our panel as well as us, don't want to hear from behind the scenes. We also encourage all of you to jump on our website as well if you don't get your questions, or to hang around afterwards. We're going to be here, if not all of our more famous people. I think you had another question?
Yes, sorry, I don't want to clog up the line. Just one last question, I promise. You mentioned that you need money. I just want to understand, I'm really naive. Explain to me how much money we need and what does it get spent on? Thanks.
Yeah, sure, unless you have it first. No, you're the candidate, you can. Okay, what does it get spent? Well, it's not my salary, it's not my pockets, it's not my pearls. The election caps in ACT are a bit different, a bit more interesting, but it fundamentally goes on a campaign. So at the beginning, your donation, especially through our website, goes into general funds, Independence for Canberra. Because we are still BC before candidates, it's a little bit different because our funding and our necessary support base will depend on how many candidates, how many campaigns we're running. But you can be assured that it's not going on a single dollar that you don't know about. So Tom mentioned access, action, answers. They're the principles that we run this party on. So very differently than political parties, where you donate, sign a disclosure form, never have any idea what the hell it's spent on. How much money do you lose to lose that election? It's crazy. We will be accountable, we'll be transparent. You'll be able to track your dollar. It's that call flute, it's that flyer, it's that door knocking, it's that letterbox. But it's not on us and it's not on other people. As it is admin and staff, you'll know about it. That's about it. Yep. Oh, Mr. Stefaniak.
Hi, daughter-in-law, how are you? Well done to you and Tom on organising this. Look, I think, firstly, I'm part of actually the last non-Labor Green government. In fact, two of my ministerial colleagues, including the former Chief Minister, are here, so that's not too bad, 3 out of 5. But it was a hell of a long time ago. Let me say to start with, I'm certainly not interested in being a candidate for anything in this election, but look, I am convener of the Belko Party and we are very interested in being involved, joining in. I think it's terribly important that we do change the government. I'm excited by the fact that quite likely there could well be 5 independents here. Tom, I like the way you're indicating that you don't expect them all to agree, and I think that's really important. Let me announce here and now that Mal Meninga won't be a candidate. I spoke to him about 5 weeks ago and he's just not interested. But I'm sure there'll be some excellent candidates. I was delighted to hear Aunty Violet want to stand. We've only got one candidate so far, Jason Taylor. Stand up, Jason, ex-Detective Sergeant for Mirrabee. Jason probably will be the only candidate standing who actually almost got killed defending his community. He went to a domestic between a father and son and they turned on him. I think that was somewhere in Yarrabee and he almost died on the job. So as a former police officer, he brings a lot to it. But I'm sure there'll be a lot of wonderful candidates. Might I say to my old colleague Michael, I sort of disagree a bit with Michael on the first assembly because that was an assembly where Liberal Labor combined had 9 seats and all the other various independents were 8. There's about 5 different groupings, 6 when Michael left the residents' rally, and I reckon it worked fairly well because you had to compromise. You had a lot of good ideas coming in there. So I think this has got immense potential. We're certainly in the Belko Party very keen to be involved and look forward to moving forward. And I like your principles, and I like what you said there today, Tom, about how it might well work. Good luck, and I can certainly see you probably getting rid of probably 5 Green members, I'd imagine, and who knows, you might end up with as many as the Liberal Party or the Labor Party. It's got a lot of potential. Cheers.
Thanks, Grandpa Bill.
Hi, I'm just wondering whether the plan is to use the community independent movement style approach to selecting candidates, which, as I understand it, is how ProAct was the team that put the word out and found David amongst others, and then community chose David. Just wondering how you're going to do it.
Yeah, we've been kind of waiting around hoping that someone would do that for the last 12 months, and no one has. So it's a bit of, we're kind of trying to do everything at the same time, have these sorts of conversations, work out a candidate selection process. It really depends on how many people get involved and are willing to be part of that. We're having some initial conversations and have already spoken with a bunch of people who are interested in being candidates, and we're keen to run them through a selection process with a kind of selection panel and to have them present to people who want to be involved. So it's a similar model. It's different in that I'm involved from the beginning and I'm willing to put my hand up to run, but I won't be running the candidate selection process. I can tell you that that's one of the great things about having Clare involved, is that she's not a potential candidate, so she'll be kind of running us through our steps on that. But yeah, more to come on exactly what that's going to look like in the next couple of weeks.
Yuma. Also like to pay my respects to Ngunnawal mob and to acknowledge the unceded sovereignty of this land, and to acknowledge that underneath Ngunnawal country are the ecosystems that nurture, sustain, provide and protect us. I'm Peter Tate. Declaration of interest, I'm from the Canberra Alliance for Participatory Democracy. We love we're totally non-partisan, so we're not taking sides here, but we love the fact that the Canberra Independence is giving the community an opportunity to participate in the democratic process, both in the selection of candidates and the election of the candidates, because as voters that's our power. But also we're interested in, after the candidates are elected, how are they going to continue to maintain a relationship with the citizens and their constituents that's more than just waiting for people to show up to the office. So that's the first thing. The second point I'd like to make is that we are very interested in the quality of candidate that gets up, and we will be running some kitchen table conversations to think about how we can judge the quality of our candidate, and then later on we might run some town halls to interview the candidates that come forward, all the candidates that come forward. So just laying all that on the table. Finally, there is an issue between how do voters find out about candidates other than having to go and talk to them and the websites and all the usual ways, listen to the media, and how do candidates transmit effectively to voters so they can understand what's going on. To that end, the Canberra Alliance has formed a collaboration with a mob called Vote Easy, who are from Brisbane. They're a commercial group, so they'll get the candidates to pay. But their point is they have a website. The candidate can put on this website any information they want about themselves, including links to their own website, to policies, to everything. So what we're trying to do is get a one-stop shop where voters can go to find out about the candidates, and the candidates can put information about themselves. Elections ACT also have a website to do this, so that's another opportunity to let yourself be known. So I just encourage you to use these services. Vote Easy doesn't pay us, we don't pay them. We are collaborating with them because it's an opportunity to join candidates and voters together. So all the best luck for the people who want to stand, and power to the people. Thank you.
Sorry, this is probably more of a statement than a question. It took me 4.5 years to go to every single country town in Queensland, and I averaged about 2,600 kilometres a week for 40 weeks of every year. And we forget that there's huge amount of revenue that's from the mines, from Queensland, Western Australia, and they're now moving into New South Wales. They're really looking hard at South Australia and Tasmania. But here in the nation's capital, we don't model through the suburbs that we develop good regional development practices. We have the largest public service ratio in the whole entire country dedicated towards furthering and developing ideas. Proportionately, we have the highest number of university students doing masters and PhDs that don't pass on their intellectual prowess into developing good community systems. You mentioned your 5-year-old son and wanting to have, good outcomes for that kid. The development in Strathnan, they sold that land for $800,000 in 2004, and then they divided that block into 12,000 lots. They didn't allow for enough community infrastructure within that development plan, and now they're wanting to shift the only primary school onto public land that is paid for by taxpayers' dollars into the arts centre. And the only playground that they're giving those kids, I was about to swear, was a wetland project. The second one of those kids drown in the wetlands during a flood, they will close down the only open and accessible area for those kids to play in. Developers, the Land Development Agency doesn't have a blueprint for development for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 or 100 years down. They leave it to the individual developers. They don't have, they haven't mapped the pollinating and migratory patterns for the ecosystem. They aren't incorporating the biosphere. Their planning was so bad that the light rail was put in after the suburb. They should have had that, they shouldn't have put in a road, dug it up and then put in a light rail. They should have all just done it in one go. So there's no future blueprint. The debit trap for selling each one of those 12,000 blocks for 400,000+, the debit trap that we are putting our citizens in the community disables them from effectively engaging and participating in growing their communities. The debt trap that we are creating is needless, it is pointless, and the other 27 farms that were purchased around Canberra to go into those same subdivision, there's no future planning for those, and there's no pre-engagement into how to effectively create good communities that can service the regions of this country.
Thank you, Tom and Claire, for putting your hands up to be involved in this. And it was so wonderful to hear the word community coming up so much. And, to me, I think that's the absolute heart of things, of where we'll change. If we can change the relationship between the community and politics, we'll be able to make the change that we want to see. I just wondered if you could say a little bit more about how you see that relationship developing, how you would be seeking views from community. You mentioned, Tom, a meeting coming up later in February. But if you could say, perhaps a little bit more about your plans, about that engagement with community, hearing those views, how those perspectives will then influence the direction of independence for Canberra. Thanks.
Thanks, Claire. Thanks for coming along. Co-founder of ProAct and David Pocock's running mate. Bravo. Making us do this because you guys wouldn't. Just kidding. We've been having a lot of conversations, and this has come out of those conversations to begin with. Lots of conversations with representatives from different communities just to get a sense of, is there a desire for this? Is this something that people want? I haven't had one conversation yet where people said no. We've got that first Courage On community meeting in a couple of weeks, and then the plan is to do at least one in each electorate over the next couple of months. And then I think when we get to where we have some candidates nailed down and we have some time to really campaign, that's when we're excited to get out into the community and have more of those smaller one-on-one or kind of 1-on-5 conversations with as many different people as possible. That's our priority. I mean, there's nothing else that we're trying to do. We get asked the stalking horse question and what are you trying to achieve? I mean, I think people are right to be cynical about politicians or potential politicians, but that's all we're interested in doing. So that's the plan. We'd love to get input from people like you and our speaker from before, because we know there are lots of great groups across Canberra who want a more active democracy. And, there's the partisanship concern and totally on board with that, of course. But that's certainly our plan, and not just during the campaign, but afterwards. to be actively getting out into the community, getting out to the local shops, getting out to the local cafes, maybe bars, pubs like this one, and having as many conversations as we can. And you know, one of the things that's come up in the last year and a half for me, just on the small business front, to give one example, is I've met with a lot of small business owners who have said, we've been trying to get a politician, and you know, I'm a staffer, and they're really stoked that I'm there. You know, that David can't make it, but I can be there. They've been trying to get someone to come and see them and speak with them for years, and it's not been happening. So there's a desire for it. I think people want to contribute. They just don't know how. So we're keen to connect with those people. And we've also, at the moment, we've just put the website up so people can share your priorities there. We've got a form where you can say a bit about what you care about. And Jeremy, who's here somewhere, has been doing a lot of the pulling together of some of those ideas already. So hopefully that answers the question.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Shane Mortimer. I'm a Ngambri elder. Like Violet Sheridan, we share the same heritage. My family has a 9-generation mitochondrial connection to this country since James Ainsley fathered our great-great-great-grandmother Junin Minku. Shut up, Violet, this is my microphone. And you can turn your back all you like, it only shows you how rude you are and disrespectful. Canberra is named after my family, the Ngambri people. That's how the name was anglicised from Ngambri to Canberra. In 1826, when James Ainsley fathered my great-great-great-grandmother, Junin Minku, we have had a consecutive line of women who bring me to this point where I'm standing before you today. We accept that things have changed, and I'd like you to raise your hand if your ancestry in this land is other than ethnic Anglo. Please raise your hand. And I'd ask those of you who are potential politicians, please look around the room at these people who are not Anglo. And I mean Irish and Scottish as well, rather than just Anglo. If you are Irish or Scottish, please keep your hand up. Because this country has a 2/3 ethnic Anglo minority. It has a 51% female representation in its population, and yet both of those sectors of the community are totally disenfranchised by the 1/3 ethnic Anglo minority that dominate 95% of the seats of government. And so I would ask you to give that some consideration when you're choosing your candidates as independents, because I think that needs to be taken into consideration. If you want the votes of the 2/3 of the people in this country who are the majority of the population, that's where your votes are. Now, Violet, I don't turn my back on Ngambri country because that's bad form. And I'd like to remind you that taking money by deception is a jail sentence. Thank you.
I'd just like to ask Aunty Violet the importance of recognising real Indigenous heritage in the ACT.
Let me tell you a little bit about the history of the man that just spoke. I told you about my history. Excuse me. You are a white man. I have seen your Australian citizenship. When you asked me to meet with you for coffee, excuse me, your Australian citizenship. I let you speak. I let you speak. Now please have the decency to let me speak. No? No, how am I fraud?
We started the meeting by talking about relentless positivity, and this is not what that is.
No.
Very happy to have a conversation.
I'm one to tell you started this.
after the meeting.
I don't care two craps about the Commonwealth laws. Show us your Australian citizenship. You're a white man. You're a white man. You have no ties to this land.
I don't think it's helpful to talk further about this. Do we have any other questions or input from the floor?
You're right if I close up. Are there any more statements or questions that anyone has? Others? Yep. Gary?
My name's Gary Featherbridge. I run a community organisation called the Owners Corporation Network. It's associated with, I suppose, the emphasis at the moment is very much on affordable housing, and which affects both the purchasing part and the rental part. I mean, in terms of fitting in with the three ideas, but one quick thing, I think there's an opportunity here for people to be more green than the Greens. I mean, I look at the current Green government and or association with Labor, and I see getting, whereas there are properties around that actually do have a lot more trees. So, and I think there's an opportunity there to paint yourselves as more green than the Greens in some respects. But the other parts of what I want to just say is the rates in Canberra have been heavily tilted against the strata sector. 7 years ago, there were 1-beddies and 2-beddies who had their rates increased by 120% in 1 year. Now, this was simply by a method of moving the rating scale for those small properties in strata complexes from a 0.2% on the rating scale to a 0.6%, which meant that there was 3 times the rating that was going to happen. So overall, those properties increased by rates of 120%. For 1-beddies and 2-beddies. So it had a significant impact immediately on the rental costs in Canberra. And at that stage, I think we certainly moved to the top rental cost in the country. Subsequently, we're now number 2. Another point I wanted to make was affordable housing often relates to how many places have been defect ridden, and I think Tom made the point about government housing and how much of it is unlivable. And that's the same in the private sector as well. Much of it is unlivable. So whatever we build more and more houses, if we don't, or homes in the strata sector, if we build them and they're not, a percentage of them is not livable, we're not really increasing the housing supply to the way we expect they are. And I suppose the third point I just want to make is the maintenance of properties. The builders, the developers in particular, have been noted, a serious number of them in Canberra have been noted to use substandard products for what they use. And that means 2 years after these places are built, the maintenance costs are significantly higher than they ought to be. So I just wanted to make those couple of points, and I think those points relate to cost of living and affordability, and I think there's some of the things that Thomas has been talking about. So I just want to highlight those points, and certainly I'll be inputting to his website to put out a bit more detail on that over the time. Thank you.
Great, that'd be great. Thank you.
Good morning, Yuma. My name is Tony. I live in Hackett in the inner north, and I guess I just wanted to share what has risen as a few speakers have come up this morning. It's really, for me, not about what we know, it's about how we communicate and very much how it is that we bring our head to our heart. I think the policies will be self-evident over time because there are so many experts in our communities. But just to encourage you to make sure this is values-driven. So in our schools, there's a whole lot of challenges, and schools are struggling, especially our public school system, because we have increasing numbers of families that choose to go non-government. And so there's a bit of a brain drain, but also, simply a resourcing issue. So in the school that my youngest is in, they haven't been able to find a drama teacher for a couple of years. And so the kids are teaching themselves. And then they all got COVID and they couldn't put on the production after all. So these are real things. But the school will continue to be a good place to go to where kids belong because the value set is right. Never mind the rules about what you do with your phone, although that matters. So just to keep the values piece alive, I think the approach is far more valuable than the policies about housing. As passionate as I am about that, having worked at the Equality Rights Alliance in recent years, identifying that the fastest group of people who are at risk of homelessness are women over 50. So I'm not interested in those issues, but I think the approach really matters, the principles, the values piece. And so respect is for me at the heart of this. I don't think we're going to get anywhere without really good facilitation, a capacity to moderate, to understand how it is that you hold space to hear. Some ground rules around that, but really if people understand the values piece, then you're going to hear and you're going to be able to create silence, because I don't think you can love at speed. And the challenge in the next 8.5 months is to be able to create the conditions to care. So that's really what I wanted to encourage, and the best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony. We've got some journalists out the front who are going to ask us about our policies, so I'd encourage you to answer them with that statement if you don't mind. I think we're wrapping up. Jeremy, do you want to say anything to finish? Thanks so much for everyone for coming out and spending an hour and a half with us on a Sunday morning. Really, really appreciate it. Thanks so much to our speakers. Thanks so much. Really, really appreciate it. Hand over to Jeremy. And to our host.
Yeah, I'd like to also thank the speakers. There's some real nuggets in there. I'm going to paraphrase Kate, but I think you said democracy is in the hands of those that turn up, something like that. Well, you've turned up. Everyone here has turned up, and so by definition, I think democracy is in your hands. And in the spirit of that, go to the QR code or to the website independenceforcanberra.com and let us know what you're thinking, or just hang around for a drink or a cup of coffee, and anyone in a T-shirt, let them know what you're thinking. Thank you all for coming.